Mr. Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Mr. Chair, we have 6 members present, 1 absent. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have an agenda that you've received in your board books and has been published. Is there a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Olson and seconded by Yvette. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Community comment. Anybody from the community want to comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to recognition awards and presentations, for which we have none. And we'll now look at the consent agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved, and is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Same sign, no, Nate? No, same sign. No, it passed 6-0.
Who cares?
Yeah, we all care.
Oh, yeah.
There are no retirements. There is no finance report. Other committee reports are also absent. There are none to report. And the policy committee, this is an action item, policy 524, internet acceptable use and safety policy, and policy 903, visitors to school district buildings and sites and administrative regulations for policy 903. Is there a motion to consider these items together?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I believe the brief discussion we had at the workshop indicated that these were complying with the Minnesota School Board Association policies, and so it's standard.
That's correct.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will ask for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item I, consider first reading of positive school climate expectations policy, and we have a report, and Mr. Sesker is going to report.
We put the attachment in your document so you have that with you. We summarized it in a PowerPoint that both Ryan and I are going to show you real quickly and then leave questions for the end. So we'll go through the PowerPoint with you to summarize what this is all about. And then if you have questions after reviewing our PowerPoint and then what you've read over the weekend, then just please let us know. So we're going to go do the PowerPoint right now. Okay, the document in there that we're looking for our first reading is our positive school climate expectations policy. And as you recall, the school board asked me to get a group of folks together to take a look at a district-wide policy that addressed our student behaviors, not just for the middle school, but for K through 12. We had a nice group that we visited with, probably 15 or 20 people from the school district, which included teachers, administrators, and paras. And we went through a policy that really replicated what we would call restorative justice type policy. Go ahead. So we're focused not just on our expectations for students, but the expectations for all staff, parents, and school board members. And we're using the idea of we're all in as our theme to start this year, because in order for us to make this a successful procedure and policy, we have to make sure that everybody is going to be buying into this or believing into this. Optimum learning occurs in a positive, safe, and secure environment. Students, parents, guardians, teachers, administrators, school board, and other school staff all share in the responsibility of ensuring a positive climate for learning. The 3 steps to make this successful. Number 1 is creating a solid framework for positive student expectation, and that's what we've done in this document that's on your board packet. Number 2 are training and getting everyone to believe in the framework, our all-in philosophy. Ryan has done a good job of creating some timelines for us to have this all implemented by this fall. And then implementation with consistency, making sure everybody's on the same page when we're implementing these various areas.
So within the framework, some of the things that you'll notice are that we've outlined our parent caregiver responsibilities. Use proper chain of command before calling the school board. For instance, if your child is having an issue at the high school, contact the teacher, and then the high school principal, and then the superintendent, and then the school board. Nearly every issue is resolved at the building level. And we've bullet pointed some of those pieces as well to outline. I'm just going to go through those bullet points. Take an active role in supporting the school environment, supporting the implementation, understanding that with implementation there's going to be some adjustments along the way. Review the rules and expectations with your children. Reinforce positive behavior and acknowledge appropriate conduct. Be a partner with the district when misconduct needs to be addressed. Help your student be prepared for school, and some of the things we listed there are making sure that they have the materials that they need, make sure that they also are in attendance regularly. Provide a positive environment outside the school that includes adequate nutrition and rest, and take corrective action when requested by the teacher or principal. The framework also outlines the school board's responsibilities, and you'll see that the school board holds all the school personnel responsible for maintenance of order within the school district and supports all personnel acting within the framework of this discipline policy. Some of the things that we listed here are to listen and be empathetic, reply with things like thank you, but please call the superintendent to help with this issue, to help with that process, to make sure that people are being heard. And then things like equity versus equality, understanding that equity means to take in consideration other factors, where equality means that everybody has the equal treatment. And then the implementation, I've outlined some of the dates for us. August 14th, we have a leadership meeting where we will introduce the policy. August 27th, potentially is on the school board for approval of the policy. And then during school workshop week, the 28th, the district as a whole introducing the policy to the entire Faribault staff. And that's in the morning, and then in the afternoon, staff will go to their individual buildings, where the buildings will go through a process of understanding the policy and how does it combine with their procedures and how they're going to implement.
Question.
Go ahead.
Is that if there's a complaint, talk to the teacher, then the principal, but then with the school, you know, I'm trying to understand this. You know, when they call us, they're not supposed to be calling us, right, or not? Listen, but then they say refer to Todd. Yeah, aren't you contradicting yourself?
Well, for the school board specific, it's just easier for you to refer them to the superintendent. I mean, you can certainly say if you call the teacher first, but usually the referral has been to me. So that's the only reason why we put it there. Everybody else that we have that we deal with parents.
But now you're contradicting yourself, I think. Because with the rules we're setting now is that you got to talk to the teacher first. Don't even think about calling anybody else.
Right.
But then it goes to that. Then are you saying we're third in line?
No, I'm saying that a parent may call you and skip all those things.
Do you want that done?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But I don't know how to prevent a parent from doing that.
Okay.
So that's it. Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Really, we would be fourth in line.
Hopefully, yeah.
And our job is to shifted to third in line.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh,
Yep. That's ideally, but it, sometimes doesn't work that way. Okay, and then the whole evaluation process, we're going to evaluate, we have some dates for you too, to evaluate reports by our principals and Ryan to talk about what has happened since this policy has been implemented. Our dates are October 15th, January 7th, April 8th, and June 10th. So you'll have updates 4 times a year on on that entire process. And then just to summarize, we've seen some great strides with positive behaviors in our district. Specifically at Jefferson Elementary and Faribault High School, discipline referrals have decreased substantially over the past 3 to 4 years. You need to keep that in mind too. I know the middle school was a hot spot last year, but we've had some really, really good results in the district. We want the same results in all of our schools. Creating this framework will allow for consistency and support for implementation. Again, staff, students, parents, and school board must believe in the implementation of this policy and the procedures because Faribault Public Schools provide all students a safe. We want to provide all students a safe, successful, and academic rigorous experience. Our schools instill students with a sense of pride that gives them the confidence to succeed. So again, that's a summary of a lot of work that's happened. We went 16 hours and 2 days to really bang this thing out. After we created the basic framework, then the administrators of each of the buildings came up with the grids, and if you go through that, you can see the grids for each different level. Ryan then took that information and processed it and categorized it and made it a little bit easier for everyone to read, but it should be consistent. And now the final piece for us is the implementation and getting belief-in from staff.
Todd, can I ask, in Ryan, do you have any guess how many times you plan on pushing this out to parents and students?
I'll start. Okay. With the elementary, we have those first 2 days open, so it'll be pushed out with all the parents those first 2 days, so that hopefully we can get the K-5 kids. The middle school and the high school are strategizing right now to figure out, in fact, we just had this meeting this morning with the middle school administration, to figure out a strategy on how they're going to reach parents. We can also, we've got that school system that we can send that information out. One of the things that we're going to try to do, elementary parents, like I said, will be fairly easy, is to get all the parents to sign off on this policy and procedure, which they do anyways with the handbooks. And then do with whatever we can for any sort of means. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Ryan, or not.
No, not at this time. They're, like you said, strategizing what they can do with that. It's a lot of information to digest, so it's finding different ways for parents to interact with it. Same thing with staff.
Yeah, the only reason I ask, right, is I think in cases like this where it's a new big document, more is better. You guys are the professionals on how you'll handle it, but rest assured, right, you're going to have plenty that are going to say, what? When did I get that? Where did I see that?
Yeah, and that's where the consistency of the staff comes, and it's not just teachers. It has to be the parents, the custodians, cooks. Everybody has to be on board with this whole piece, and that's going to be your strongest advocates.
And then can I just ask, this is draft form, right?
Yes.
So, and I'm absolutely nitpicking here, but on your last page of your summary, you don't have a Falcons logo on it. On all 6 other pages you do. Okay. Just an FYI, jumps out at me. And then I would defer to Mr. Casper here, being my former English teacher. But I don't know if it's right or wrong, but when you say all in, would it be wrong to capitalize all in across the board, all letters? Because we really do need, now I'm nitpicking, right? But we really do need all in to make something like this work and to make it work the best we can. But once again, I would defer to my former teacher here. I think I got an A in that class, but I'm not sure.
You did now.
Well, I could tell some stories, but I'll pass on that. You want me to answer a capitalization question now?
I just like the emphasis.
I think when you're creating a title, you can capitalize any of the major words without any conflict with not Robert's rules, conventional grammar.
We will do that.
The chemist in me says that it should be capitalized. It is the title of a program, and it also is it could be a descriptor of actions. But
Right.
Looks like a title of a program to me,
Yeah.
and I vote for capitalization.
You got it.
Okay.
And we have, a month to look at this too. So if you have questions, and you have anything else that you see that you'd like to make improvements on, please let us know.
Is this a 48-page document?
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yep, but each school has their own individual procedures, and those are broken down within that document. So each school is not going to have the entire document.
Okay.
Yep.
So this will not, with 48 pages, it won't be published in the student handbook.
Correct.
But could a reference to it, a website link or something else be prominently displayed so that?
Yeah, and pieces of it will be emphasized in each of the handbooks.
Sure. Okay.
Right.
And will copies at the final be at each school?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
very much so, yep.
So anybody
hand
can look
copies.
at it, teachers,
Yep, parents,
students?
yep. Yep. Any way we can get that communication out, whether it's paper, electronic, whatever it is, we want to get it out there so people see it.
And this one here, I've read through it, and what is the opinion now of expulsion?
Well, if it gets to that point, there's two routes that we go with this. We first of all bring the parents together and with the student, and we talk about what the expulsion means. If the administration believes that there's an expulsion that's warranted, then we bring it to the school board and ask for the school board to approve an expulsion. Otherwise, if the parents would rather seek an alternative education, then that's negotiated too. And then we don't bring it to the school board. We will take the alternate education piece.
Now, how fast does the student get there?
To that point,
We don't want them to get there, but how many chances do they get?
it depends on, it depends on the,
What it is.
yeah, and on that sheet it has some of those outline. I mean, if it's a weapon, it's usually right away. I mean, and then if it goes over, there's a progression too that ends up being, it just depends on the situation.
Is that handled by the principal or you?
Normally when it gets to expulsion,
Of the,
beforehand,
yeah, it's not a weapon, but something minor.
yeah, it's usually handled together. We're kind of a team. If it gets to a point where it's serious, all the principals, we always communicate back and forth together. Usually our attorney gets involved too.
It has been many decades in computer time since I was responsible for such things, but I would assume that we could put an online copy that is term searchable, so that if they wanted to find out about principals' duties, they could search that way. A 48-page document would be rather intimidating all by itself.
You bet. And that's why you did the summary here.
Right.
There are districts, a lot of the language in there is prescribed by attorneys and school board association for legal backup and things. There are many districts that mail out a hard copy to every parent.
Yeah.
Have you considered that?
We haven't, we're waiting for the principals to come back with a strategy, and hopefully they can come back but that certainly is part of our things that we can do. Yeah, that's not, anything is not ruled out at this time.
I was like, oh, I like that idea now that you've said it, this
Yeah.
idea. With any document of this size, I think the fraction of parents you're gonna get to look at it before it matters for their child.
Right.
You might get a lot who are looking at it the moment that it's an issue and they're looking at serious consequences for their child. But before that, the number is gonna be smaller. And so two things came to my mind: getting the best one-page summary that you can, because I think that has a much better chance of being looked at. And then I think to make sure it's in everybody's hand is an important thing. And so as John said that, I think that's a worthwhile thing to think about, just making sure everyone has it. I think all the links and all that are all good ideas to do as well, but I think ensuring that everyone has a physical copy is not a bad route to go.
We do mail out some things to each parent now, don't we?
Well, I mean, besides the community education catalog, which is connected to we do that every 4 months or whatever that is, and some of the information we have for the school. And then each individual school does a mailing for various things.
Another thing that people like to mail out are the free and reduced lunch forms.
Yep.
Even though they don't use them, but anything you can do. So
Yeah.
if you could put together a document that has the essentials of the discipline policy, a free and reduced lunch form and explanation of who should fill it out, and the fact that it really benefits the district, and a few other key items, welcoming people back as participants in our district could go a long way.
That's a great idea.
I do know a free and reduced lunch mailer is mailed out. We get one every year as a family. Fill it out, whatever.
Yeah, we hammered that pretty hard last year. We're going to do it again this year.
Okay,
One more question, I guess. Who will do the restorative practices at each building? Is that something you're hammering out with the principals? 'Cause
We are,
that's heavily, I mean, I'm great that it's heavily in the program, but you'll just delegate certain people, or you're still hammering that out?
We're still hammering that out. We have a few people that have been trained in restorative justice through the program that I can't remember the name of the organization, through law enforcement. What was that?
They do the victim services?
Yeah, through the victim services, and they offered that program, and I know Margaret went to that. I know that Shane went to that, and I believe Jamie went to it too. So we have some folks within the district that are within that. Let me give you a quick example. Some of it's kind of common sense too, and our principals can probably train it. If we have a staff member that is not quite being consistent with the policy like we'd like that staff member to be, rather than punish that staff right away, the restorative justice piece would be to have a group of staff in their PLC time or whatever time it might be, meet with that staff member that is not being consistent with the policy, sit down with them, explain to that staff member the importance of following through with this policy, and you need to do this, and get them on the same page, and then teach that staff member how, if they need to, how to implement that policy. So that's kind of the restorative justice. Rather than immediately going to something punitive for that staff member for not carrying out that, we're offering them some support and some teaching so that staff member can adjust. You may think it's simple, but some staff members are not as comfortable as other staff members when it comes to implementing some of the discipline or some of the processes we have in our school.
Todd, can I just ask one thing? The equality and the equity piece. I totally get it, reading it and whatnot, and you guys probably have experience, and John, you probably have experience with it from your prior districts and whatnot, but does the equity piece leave too much gray area for, if I do something and Mr. Casper does something, we do the same thing, but we get punished differently? I'm just simply asking the question from, you get into the bigger schools where you have many, many more kids and many more teachers, and that type of thing. I'm simply asking the question.
Yep. I think one of the things that when we had met a couple of times is if there is a situation where we have to treat an individual a little bit differently than another individual, that the principal, when they administer whatever that discipline is, would go back to that staff member without divulging any sort of data privacy information, let that staff member know that, you know what, I understand, but this is the way we're going to deal with it. You just have to understand that this is a situation that we've been dealt with, and that's how we're going to do it. So, and that's a tough one, though. And some people look at it and say, why was my son treated like this, and now this child's treated like that? There are certain circumstances that come up that just make it impossible for us to be equal.
I think the key thing is you can treat two individuals with the same offense differently as long as the reason you're treating them differently is not based on race, religion, color, gender, any of those discriminatory things. So that's what a district-wide policy helps principals and staff work on. So
this document is colorblind?
Yes, very much so. And gender, yep, all that. Yep.
And the final form, or is our attorney looking at this?
She has not looked at it yet. If you'd like us to take a look at it. We actually took a lot of this from a school out in California that's been using it for a long time, but we can certainly have her take a look at it. Most of the matrices are where you're going to be seeing a lot of those issues and the discipline piece handled. And not just, we cater it to our own school, but a lot of it is very similar to the schools that are all over the state. If there's any Ryan's looked through it too, and I don't know if we've seen anything that we would raise a red flag to.
Is there any appeal process built into this? And I'm thinking from a parent's point of view that, we have gone through and followed this step by step by step, but they still feel that there was some inequity or something. And is there a route of appeal that they might pursue? I didn't see one as I was going through the document, but perhaps I missed it.
You know, Todd, maybe you can speak to the student one, but as an example with the staff, for instance, we reference the staff discipline policy. So this policy does reference 403, which then gets into the process, and then also would it have an appeal process or a contractual process?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know if there's anything, we'll look at that, Tom. I mean, we've been kind of informal about the process. If you don't agree with the teacher, you go to the principal. If you don't agree with the principal, you go to the SUP and so on. But I'd love to have a paper trail on that. We'll think about that and see if there's something we can put in.
Well, it just, in my experience, there have been, no matter how detailed and step-by-step and explanatory along the way, there are some people that remain unsatisfied. And I'm not saying that they maybe are correct in that feeling, but if there were an appeal process, then that eliminates the, well, you're just picking on me because my name is Fred. It would be, I know it would be it might be a nightmare, and hopefully we would not get to it, but having it available, I think, could deflate some of the blind criticism that we have seen over the years.
You can put after the elementary, middle, and high school, just a paragraph of the process for
absolutely.
There's already something with suspension and expulsion, but for the other infractions, we'd have some.
You could just read, by statute, Minnesota due process law would resolve all these issues. Ultimately, there's certain steps that need to be taken when a student is disciplined, protections for the student in there. And once that is contested, it moves up the ladder, eventually comes to the school board, and if they don't like that, eventually can go to a hearing officer, an arbitrator. So that's pretty well defined, so you could just reference Minnesota due process law.
Yeah, if that is part of the document, then we can say, well, this is our process. We're going to take it step by step, and if at the end you are still unsatisfied, then here's where you go.
You bet. Good stuff. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Item 9A is consideration of a revised school calendar. It's attached. What's the change?
Sorry, snow days. We had a couple extra days that we took off, so we have to reduce the number of days legally, so we get the right percentage.
All right. Okay. Oops, I should have said this first. Is there a motion to consider the revised calendar for 2000? This is last year.
Last year's correct. Yep.
That's easier. 2017-2018 calendar. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Student handbooks. This is an action item from Jefferson, Lincoln, Roosevelt, and McKinley. Is there a motion to consider these as a group?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. One thing I noticed was they took out the fact that the home-based teacher was going to call the parents if the unexcused absences exceeded 5, I believe it was. So that comes out, but that function is being taken by somebody else. It's not that.
That's correct. Our social workers take that up.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Item C, approval of Faribault Middle School proposal to increase hours of the Student Services Secretary to make this a full-time position. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, we've been hearing plans and needs and so on for some time, and I'm certainly not opposed to this item nor the next one all by itself. But in our discussions of a 7-period day, we've tried to make the point that the proposal should be comprehensive in the sense that what are all the resources, positions, materials, room, whatever, that would be needed in order to make that successful. I know that there's been considerable discussion about the middle school situation. I don't feel totally confident that the 2 positions that we have in front of us tonight are necessarily comprehensive in the sense of trying to make our renewed middle school totally operational. The staff administration did a wonderful job in trying to find ways to get that operational. We're seeing that, and without a great budget impact, we're seeing some of the fallout from that in these 2 positions that we're dealing with tonight. But I'm wondering if there are other things on the minds of the building administration or the central administration or the teaching staff or whomever that would be, I'll use the expression from waiting in the weeds. So, as I said, I understand and I am in favor of the 2 items that are on our agenda tonight, but I would hope that there has been some consideration to see if this is as extensive a list as we're going to need in order to make that work, and if not, what else is needed. These 2 seem to be sensible in addressing some of the issues that we've had, but I'm not sure it addresses all the issues of making the middle school work.
We had Mr. Mihawk appear before us with staff 3 different times, and I met with him after one of those meetings. I apologize for the way we treated him a couple of times. I didn't think it was fair to have him here and have to explain things the way we did. But after the first meeting, when I met with Mike, I said, well, how can the board help? And he mentioned 3 things. He mentioned he needed more student services time. He mentioned they needed more lunchroom supervision time, and they needed more cameras. And so knowing that this has been on his list for quite some time, I certainly propose that we adopt all of these. I don't think it's comprehensive. I think there's probably more help that they need there, and I think we need to encourage them to keep asking us for support in what they need to do to make the middle school a place we're all proud of. Not that we're not mostly proud of it now. We know we have issues, but I certainly would support both of these.
Well, this board will have responsibility for long-term planning and the clearer picture that we can get about what is needed, what are some of the current issues, potential issues, goals that are not being met. If the board has that clearer picture of that, we can make better longer-term decisions.
Okay. Any other discussion on item C, student services?
One comment, I will not support this or item number D. In my opinion, we're throwing money at this and we're wasting our money when we should be talking about the leadership of the middle school.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carried 6-1. Mr. Olson voting no. Consideration of the Faribault Middle School proposal to hire a full-time hallway supervisor, lunchroom supervisor, and Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carried 6-1. Mr. Olson voting no. Superintendent evaluation report, and I think that's me.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, okay. Tonight, July 23rd, we're reporting on the results of a meeting we held on July 9th. The school board held a meeting and it lasted, I'll go from here. The meeting was called to order at 5:30 and adjourned at 7:30 p.m. Members present: Curry, Enbright, Vogelsberg, Marthaler, Casper, and Wolf. Members absent: Mr. Olson. Also present was Superintendent Sesker. The board evaluated Mr. Sesker on the following position characteristics. He was found to meet or exceed each item. 1, is sensitive to the reactions of other people, deals with them positively and with understanding. 2, shows evidence of emotional control, is calm, poised, and mature. 3, is enthusiastic and positive. 4, listens well. 5, is a member of a team, adjusts readily and works constructively in group activities. 6, initiative. He works independently, sees the need for and takes action required to carry out responsibilities. Establishes and maintains credibility. 8, dependability and perseverance is that he promises and finishes tasks without frequent checking and in spite of difficulties. And then finally, summarized, and this would be my statement, I believe Todd is a good leader. He's innovative and responsive to community needs. We are fortunate to have Todd leading our district, and we'll need his leadership as we face some difficult times. So again, this is a superintendent evaluation is done at least once a year, and we plan to do it twice a year, and that's by recommendation not only of the 7 people sitting here, but also the Minnesota School Board Association and the Association of School Administrators, which is the Superintendent's Association. And again, Superintendent Sesker was found to meet or exceed all of those characteristics. Okay, other items of information. School board members, anything else?
I would just like to thank the other members of the school board for those of you that have continued to support the Faribault Booster Club. Thank you for your annual support. And if any of you are available tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. in Nolan Gym, we'll be doing a kind of live in-game demonstration for potential sponsors and whatnot. It'll last about half hour, 45 minutes max. So you're all invited 7:30 tomorrow morning if you're interested. So thank you.
I'd like to follow up on a statement I made at the last meeting, expressing a little bit of frustration at a lack of school board discussion on 2 terms in particular. One is literacy, and the other is what is a well-educated Faribault graduate supposed to look like. Now, Mr. Chairman, you rightfully said that we could discuss educational philosophy until the eruption of the Yellowstone caldera, which will probably end life on the earth, and you're probably right about that. But it would be of interest to me, and recognizing that my time on the board may be coming to an end in January, unless I decide to run again in a couple of years, it would seem to me to be helpful to have some basic common page understanding of what those 2 terms mean: literacy and the qualities of a well-educated Faribault graduate. So I'm going to be sending you an email with a 2-question item that we might, if based on your consideration, distribute to the board and use as a discussion piece at a work session. And in addition, with our new and forgive me for messing up titles again, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Teaching and Learning, all that sort of thing. I would be interested in hearing what that position in our district, his ideas on the what literacy means to us in our delivery of curriculum, and what is his overall vision of what a well-educated Faribault High School graduate might look like. And I'm not looking for a book. I'm just looking to see how much commonality we have, and with the belief that not that we have to all agree about everything, but at least to have an understanding of where we are, and to have some level of agreement would be helpful in making good decisions.
Thank you. Any other board reports? Mr. Sesker.
We have been working on a strategic plan for our Cannon Valley Special Education Co-op. They are newly formed, so we are coming up with some new visions. The old visions were kind of canned from before, but they were good, so we're revising all of those. We have been meeting with the facilities committee to see what sort of needs our school district is looking at. We've had, the last time, I think we had 26 people show up, so it's been a good group. The thought exchange is another piece, Ryan, I forgot to add, to help us implement this new policy. We are going to use thought exchange. It's called a standard thought exchange, and we'll use that with our leadership team first, and we'll make it a live thought exchange. So we'll put the question up there about believing in the plan, and then also some different topics about the positive school climate expectations. And then we will also use that thought exchange at the Tuesday workshop with the entire staff, and Matt Steichen will be leading that effort. So that should be pretty cool. The other thing I want to mention is that we have decided not to run an operating levy for the 7-period day for this fall. It is still extremely important for us to take a look at that. We don't want to make it sound like it's anything less than it is. It is something that we all want. We just need a little bit more time to see what the community wants to. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
One last thing. Unless there's some unforeseen circumstance, I would like to congratulate Mr. Curry at chairing the second shortest school board meeting that I've been in attendance to.
Thank you. Is there a second to his motion? No. Okay, there's policy committees and things going on, but for the general public, our next full board meeting will be a work session on August 13th. The next meeting will be August 27th. That's a regular board meeting here. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Did you move and second your own item?
No, Tom also made a motion, so I threw in my second.
Okay, I don't want to violate any rules. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.